first guest. An individual that's good enough to come on at least once a month, and well, we've been jockeying around because been busy out in Washington trying to figure out what's going on. Congressman Kelly Armstrong, welcome back to Afternoons Live, man.
Yeah, I got bumped by a Twins game, and then I bumped you 3 times because we're a complete disaster out here.
That's what I was going to say. Describe the caucus. Describe what's going on in the House, and you say a complete disaster.
Yeah, it's like we go up to the floor and step on a rake and go up there and embarrass ourselves on national TV and go back into a conference and figure it out. It's almost like guys like us 2 weeks ago saying when they did the vacate to McCarthy that when you have a coup without a successor, you have chaos. And that's what we have right now, and it's really, really unfortunate. And not just for political embarrassment, because we're getting plenty of that. But also the world's a lot more dangerous today than it was yesterday.
Well, that sense of urgency is what's surprising me, that, and your words saying, going back up, stepping on rakes, hitting yourself in the face, because you're right. I mean, when you look at any monitor I've got on right here, I mean, the world, the turmoil, this got to amplify a little bit of pressure to get something done, get a speaker in line. So any progress? Because it seems as though you guys took another step backwards when it comes to your guy and Jim Jordan today.
Yeah, I gave Jim Jordan's nominating speech, and when Steve Scalise beat him in conference, I was going to go to the floor and vote for Steve Scalise because that's how the rules work. Now Jim Jordan's got the majority. I've obviously served with him under 3 committees. I think he would do a great job at this, and he doesn't have the votes either in the Republican conference. He just doesn't. I don't think we can get anybody to 217. So I'm assuming we're going to meet again sometime tonight and figure out if we actually, want to be adults and help govern the damn country.
So, Jim Jordan, you did the nomination speech, and I want to focus on that because there's been people that have been asking, why? Why is Jim Jordan the guy that garnered your support, Congressman?
Well, so I served under him as a ranking member twice and a chairman once. And I think most people see the partisan brawler, the guy on TV, the guy everywhere. I see the guy who coordinates and works with every member in his committee to help them all succeed and means what he says and says what he means. I think he's our best chance to stay out of a shutdown. I think he has the credibility with the Republican base to sell his plan. And of all of the people that have put their names in for it since the disaster that was 2 weeks ago, he's the one with the strategy to get us through this, both from a policy perspective and a political perspective.
I want to, because somebody's had that job before, and it's only, I think, more appropriate to hear from another Republican than someone like myself here, because John Boehner served in that role for quite some time, and he kind of touched on exactly what you just said about the perception of Jim Jordan. I want you to take a listen to what former Speaker of the House, John Boehner, had to say, and then get your reaction on the other side, Congressman.
You call some of these members political terrorists.
Oh, yeah, Jim Jordan especially, my colleague from Ohio. I just never saw a guy who spent more time tearing things apart and never building anything, never putting anything together.
Your reaction to what former Speaker John Boehner had to say about his perception of Jim Jordan?
Yeah, I don't even know when he gave that, but that's not the perception I've had since I've been here. He's been incredibly, worked very closely with Doug Collins, who used to chair Judiciary. He worked very closely with Jason Smith, the chair of Ways and Means, and Jamie Comer, and he worked very closely and did as much as he could to help Kevin McCarthy succeed in that role. So I've had nothing but positive experiences. I wasn't here when all that happened. I think there is a lot of legacy bad blood from those times in Congress. But Congress is very different in 2023 than it was in 2012.
Congressman, there's been a couple of things that have been thrown my way as we've been watching along here. Obviously, agriculture being one of the leading industries here in the state, and people are quick to point out that Jim Jordan has not backed a farm bill. You as the sole representative of North Dakota, why? Why throw your support behind Jim Jordan that doesn't support that industry in the state you represent?
So the very first thing he did after he was nominated, this is when he was still running against Steve Scalise, is I think Randy Feenstra, it was either Randy Feenstra or Brad Finstead, set up a call with the biofuels conference, and it was essentially that. Are you going to commit to getting a farm bill done? And he told us, yes, we have to pass the farm bill. So that was good enough for me. I take Jim at his word. He's never lied to me, and that makes it work. I mean, he's going to try and get 217 Republican votes for anything we get off the floor. That's his nature. That's the nature of politics. But he's fully aware that to get anything signed, you need 60 Democrats and a president to sign it.
As far as getting things signed, I know I'm hung up on Jim Jordan just because, as you said, there's No one else right now.
I wouldn't expect. Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, so not getting anything passed with his name on it, co-sponsored. I mean, when Donald Trump was president, GOP had the Senate, the House, and the presidency. How did he not get anything passed in that time, Congressman?
Well, I think the easy answer is he's the committee chair and ranking member. And first of all, you're on judiciary and oversight. But secondly, he lets his committee members have the bill. That's what I mean. This is the part of this that you see that you don't necessarily see unless you do the inner workings. I would go back more towards what bills, bipartisan bills, get passed. For the most part, and what bills we mark up and support. And as the leader of the committee, you don't have to have your name on it to move legislation. And that's what I mean about him being really good at empowering members.
Final question I got for you, and this one I'm seeing all over in our text club at 35270. And then we'll ask about what comes next. People are wondering, the whole 2020 election. You and I have had conversations about that over and over about, what I would have liked to see. Jim Jordan is very vocal in, what he thought of that election, his post-election conduct. People called into question allegations about trying to overturn the previous election. Your response, your reaction to that allegation of Jim Jordan's role, does it sway you at all?
Well, obviously, I think they were wrong. I voted to certify. I've been pretty clear about that. But that also disqualifies over 60% of our Congress or of our conference if you deal with that or deal with the vote after certification. And I just don't think that's a barometer that we're setting for who our speaker is moving into the future.
What comes next, Congressman? You said, look, we're going to go back to the conference room tonight. We're going to probably be, cordial conversations. Could you put us on speakerphone next time you guys get back together so we could just be that fly on the wall? I can only imagine.
So you would be. So they take our phones away now, which is actually a good practice. So the D.C. reporters aren't live tweeting private family discussion. At least they have to wait till it's over to do it. But no, we're going to go in. But we can't. This can't be just simply airing of grievances, and which is what it's been for. You have McCarthy people who are angry. You have a lot of people who are angry at Matt Gaetz and the 8 people who voted to vacate. You have Steve Scalise supporters who are angry because he got a majority of the majority and had to resign because he didn't have 217. And now you have Jordan supporters who are angry because he got a majority of the majority and didn't get 217. And my answer to all of that is I don't care about your emotions. I have to care about figuring out how we elect a Republican speaker, because the alternative is we're going to have to figure out how to get 217 votes to put somebody in that chair on the floor. And we have to do it quickly. We cannot leave again until we get it done.
Well, the alternative, Congressman, is that other party across the aisle from you and brokering a deal. And the latest I've heard is the pro tem right now and Representative McHenry, who doesn't want the job. But I got to be honest with you, I don't know who in the world would want the job given the circumstances right now. Is that something that, hey, at least to get the ball rolling, even if it's through the government shutdown deadline, that we can at least keep McHenry there, or is that a no-go?
Well, I've been pretty clear. Well, he has to get granted more authority, and that would take a vote on the floor. So that really depends on what that looks like. And, I obviously would very, very much prefer to get a Republican speaker elected with 217 Republican votes. But we're going on 2 weeks since the motion to vacate, and we can't fill the chair, which we knew was going to be those of us that were smart and think actually Kevin McCarthy did a really good job holding this thing together with silly putty and duct tape, recognized what the problem was. So whatever it takes to get this done is where we got to go. We got to get. I'm not doing anything for the constituents in North Dakota right now. How's that for an honest answer from a politician? We're sitting here in some stupid palace intrigue, which is a bunch of people pulling on old wounds, whatever the case. I don't care. It's time to get somebody elected, and I'll keep working for whoever has the majority of our conference's support.
I got a question for you. I've had nothing but questions for you. That's why I'm glad you're joining us today. You were quoted in the Washington Post when you're talking about, hey, here's why you guys need to get behind Jim Jordan. Basically, and this is the quote that was in the Washington Post.
Yeah, I can explain it.
Yeah, okay. Well, let me read it to those, and then you can respond. He's the best person to keep us out of a government shutdown and the best person to keep conservative media off our backs as we face this shutdown. Explain the conservative media off your backs. Is that a dig at Sean Hannity?
No, it's just a dig at everybody. Government shutdowns are terrible. By the way, they're terrible for everybody. They're terrible if you got to get into an FSA office, but you have a veterans claim, or you have an immigration claim, or you have a passport claim. They're terrible. We're fighting over less than 1/3 or 1/2 of 1/3 of the budget in discretionary spending, which isn't going to solve anything near our $33 trillion in debt. But the answer is Jim Jordan has a plan to keep us out of a shutdown. He has the credibility to sell it to our base, and he can allow us a little more courage to do what's right because he will keep conservative. I mean, he has more credibility in that space and an actual plan than anybody else that has jumped into this thing since Kevin got vacated. And it's just the truth. I mean, when you go, if you pass a CR, in the weeds is it's a CR to the date of a 1% sequester. Now, it doesn't matter if you're Democrats, Republicans, House, or the Senate. Nobody wants a 1% cut to defense right now. Nobody responsible does, including me. The reason you force that deadline is because if you don't get your appropriate bills done, then a 1% cut comes. And there's a tremendous amount of motivation in this town to make sure that doesn't happen. I'm not saying it's the world's greatest plan. It's D.C. None of these plans are great, but it's actually an actionable plan that could get us closer to doing something differently than has been done in this town for the last 25 years.
Well, I've said it before. Deadlines and tragedy seem to get the things moving here, whether it's in Congress or here.
The last thing any Republican in the House of Representatives wants is an omnibus sent over to us from the Senate with a Christmas tree in the Capitol, which is what happens every single year. This is the best shot of making that not happen and also doing it in a way where we don't get blown up from every side while we're trying to actually accomplish something, curb our spending, and let government function.
Congressman Kelly Armstrong, our guest. You got comments coming into 35270. Somebody's asking about whether or not, again, it's all about Jim Jordan, whether or not you think those Ohio State wrestlers are liars. I'm just curious, your response to the allegations of what he did not know in his time in Ohio.
So, my response is pretty simple. It's the same as it always is. I've got 5 years of allegations. I'm not aware of him being sued. I'm not aware of him being prosecuted. I'm not aware of any judgment against him whatsoever after 5 years. Just think of the amount of litigation that's engaged Donald Trump in those 5 years. If there was there, then they should go do it and prove it in a courtroom. Otherwise, then you're where you're at. There's a lot of allegations floating around about a lot of different people, but if we just did that's not the appropriate way to judge things.
Congressman, you talked about the emotions, and people being hurt over McCarthy, being hurt over Jordan. The list goes on. Is the other holdout right now aid for Ukraine? Is it aid for A, B, and C? I have actually another representative I want to play just a clip from, because debt is always something that keeps getting brought up, and I'm going to play this clip from Representative Cole and get your response to this on the flip side.
Yeah.
Unlike any other speaker we've had, he's had the courage to talk about a long-term plan and to get at the real drivers of debt. And we all know what they are. We all know it's Social Security. We all know it's Medicare. We all know it's Medicaid. No president of either side has been willing to deal with this. No speaker of either side has been willing to deal with this.
So that was Representative Cole talking about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid being debt drivers. Is it Social Security? Is it the Ukraine aid? What is the other factor besides temper tantrums that's preventing the next speaker from getting their votes?
No, I don't think it's so much that. I think, first of all, Israel is going to put a large focus on that. There's obviously broad bipartisan support. Our problem with those of us that support our role in the Ukraine conflict is that nobody's made the case. And there's plenty of blame to go at us right now, and we've got all kinds of pie or egg in our face, and we deserve every bit of it. But the White House has never come out and made a case for why we're there. So it's going to be up to some of us to do it, because our constituents all across America, particularly in red districts, are starting to lose faith. And if we lose our constituents, then we lose the will to move forward. I think one of the positives that's maybe the only positive that's going to come out of this circus over the last 2 weeks is a real. I'm stealing a line actually from Chairman Jordan, and he said, "I don't know why we got to spend money to say we spend too much money, but putting a debt commission on learning from the mistakes of past ones and forcing the issue is something that I think we actually will get done if we ever get a speaker together. And we have to have honest conversations about those things, and we have to do it in divided government and recognize that without reform, a lot of those programs are going to continue to drive up our debt to an unsustainable level."
Final question, and I guess I'll let you get back after the more fun conversations inside the caucus rooms here. Describe your caucus. Describe what this moment means. Give me a word. Give me a descriptor of the Republicans in Congress with the display that the world's seeing right now.
So Matt Gaetz, when he was talking about the motion to vacate with Kevin McCarthy, said it's time to pull off the Band-Aid. I think that's exactly what happened. I just don't think the sore that was opened up was the one he thought he was opening up. And what you have is a lot of different people that have had enough. And unfortunately for my friend Jim, he is kind of the last guy standing, because I personally believe the 8 people that voted to vacate won when they vacated Kevin McCarthy. Matt Gaetz said he would have supported Steve Scalise. I actually think all 8 of them would have supported Steve Scalise in the proper setting. Their goal was to get rid of Kevin. But now you have a bunch of people that are not going to reward that type of behavior anymore, and they're digging in and they're saying enough is enough. And so we are at somewhat of an impasse. Two people who voted to vacate Kevin did more damage to Jim Jordan by noon on Saturday than the guys that were trying to help him get the votes could have happened. You know, when you have members of Congress who voted to get rid of the last speaker, putting everybody who has concerns. And by the way, if you serve for a long time in Congress with Jim Jordan, there are real concerns, and he will go meet with anybody and talk to them about them. But putting your colleagues in your own party on blast constantly has started to get a little old for people, and I understand their frustration.
The one question
that was not one word.
No, that was,
I think frustrate. I think the biggest. I mean, I kind of said it, and I don't mean this trivially. I said I'm bored. And we're doing the same thing over and over again. It's like Groundhog Day. Like we're like, and I don't mean that because it's more important than that. Right. But I think frustrate. There is a level of frustration, and it goes in different places right now. And I mean, I think it's a fight that's been coming to a head. But there's a reason you don't kick speakers out in the middle of a Congress, because getting a new one in the chair, it turns out, isn't real easy to do.
Well, and that leads to the final question, I guess. We keep getting thoughts in my mind here, because I think the underlying question that people had, including my listeners here, that you know where I'm sitting, they're backers of Republicans. And the question is, if they can't govern themselves in the House, why should we trust them to govern, period?
I mean, it's a math issue, and my answer to that would be because, you know what, doing nothing sometimes is still better than the alternative. I don't want to go back to a house where bills are coming out of the speaker's lobby at midnight and we're forced to vote on 2,000-page bills at noon the next day. One of the things that has happened over the last 9 months that I hope we don't lose sight of is every member of Congress can offer an amendment and can go advocate that's something important to their jurisdiction. And one of my concerns about Kevin getting thrown out is the new leader, whoever that is going to say, well, that didn't work for him, so I'm going to close it all off. You know, and rightfully so. A lot of people talk about Pelosi and her ability to keep her caucus in line. That is true. But she didn't even let her committee chairs do legislation. She ran it out of the speaker's office. And that is just not, I wouldn't be a part of that conference. That's no knock on my friends on the other side of the aisle. But going back to that model of governance is not an improvement, even as chaotic as it is now.
Do you have a deadline in mind that you're hopeful that, hey, this is done? I mean, look, we got to be honest. Jim Jordan doesn't seem like he's going to be the guy.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody who supports him, I really there may be a path there, and I'll go talk to him and his guys, but it doesn't look truly optimistic right now. Yeah, I think we have to have something. I mean, we've wasted 2 weeks while the world's on fire. The deadline was, how about yesterday? That was the deadline.
2 weeks ago, I think, is what we all would have wished, but I know things are slow turning out there.
Well, but you know, and some of it, even I'm not immune to a little frustration. I had a very good friend of mine on the other side of the aisle walk up to me today and say, "We cannot have Jim Jordan as speaker." I go, "Well, yeah, I should have thought about that 14 days ago."
Well, I know this whole Democrats thing, but I mean, there's also you've been, I think, kind of picking around the edges, Congressman, about, look, this is finally boiled over to the point to where we've had enough. That Band-Aid was ripped off. It's not the one that Matt Gaetz is. This festering of people within the Republican Party, you can look at it right here in North Dakota where they almost censured you. That environment's been allowed to kind of grow, and now it's reached that it's boiling over here. So that's where people like myself saying the Republican Party's kind of got to clean their own house, Congressman. Your response to that?
Well, I mean, that's fine, but you should be honest about it. It wasn't a procedural vote. And to call it a procedural vote and lockstep on it like it's a procedural vote is not that's not an accurate statement. I don't behoove any of them for how they voted. I don't think you'd find a lot of Republicans that would support Nancy Pelosi in that situation, me included. So I'm not criticizing their vote. I'm criticizing their justification for it.
Congressman, I always appreciate the opportunity. I'm way behind my time. I know how little time you've got between shouting matches, friendly handshake. I don't know what's going on.
I'm just trying to calm everybody down and get something moving forward. And so far I haven't done a good job. We'll try again today.
Well, we'll be following along right here. All right. I appreciate your time. You take care.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Congressman Kelly Armstrong right here in North Dakota. Lots and lots of your thoughts at 35270. Way by my time. You, me, this microphone, your cell phone, the whole rest of the way. I'm Tyler Axness. You're listening to After News Live.